watching closely.
How's it rolling, everyone, and welcome back to the KINOMENTOR channel. Today what we'll be talking about is film directing and how film directors can be exactly the same as magicians. They might have magical powers. Well, at times it does seem so, like they do have magical powers. Well, even if we know that movies are not real, we nonetheless enjoy them and often find ourselves crying out loud or laughing out loud. We never wonder why they're artificial. How does a director manipulate us into thinking they're actually real? That's the ultimate illusion. So after the intro, let's find out how that's done. In his 1962 book, Profiles of the Future, An Inquiry into the Limits of the Possible, science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke created his famous 3 laws, with the third rule being the most well-known and often quoted. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Well, you see, film is still nowadays considered as advanced technology. It can be also still intrinsically linked with magic because it requires one key thing from its audience, and that's suspension of disbelief, sometimes known as voluntary suspension of disbelief, referring to the act of not letting one's critical thinking or reasoning get in the way of one's pleasure of something fantastical, such as a work of speculative fiction. So how does this all work? Well, it all starts at the structural level, like everything, by having 3 parts. So how many parts does a magic trick have? Well, let's unwrap that. The magician starts with the pledge, when he or she displays an everyday object like a dove, and the second one is called the turn, and it involves the magician doing something spectacular, like making the dove vanish. And finally, in the prestige, the magician outdoes himself by making the dove return on the stage. So you see, for the director it's the same thing, except that he has 3 acts. He has the setup, where the characters must be at their lowest point to be interesting. They need to be broken like Bane broke Batman's back. How are they coping with that? They must somehow be at the end of their rope for the story to start and be interesting. Then you have the confrontation. How are they trying to realize their next goal? How are they trying to change the situation that they're in? And what do they do to get back to their so-called normal life? Obviously, an adventure kicks in and it unfolds, reaching a lot of moments until the climax and the final resolution in the 3rd act, where they're back to where they started, for better or for worse, with a lesson learned. And this is clearly an oversimplification of the structure to illustrate the point. If you want to find out more about the 3-act structure, check out this video. If done right, we are invested in the trick, and that appeals to us. Our imagination is engaged, and it makes everything both vivid and emotive, and it might be mistaken by our subconscious for reality. And if we have the intellectual understanding that the film is a forgery, our emotional and physical responses treat it as though it were the actual thing. See, the magician provides evidence that seems reasonable at first glance, but he or she is hiding the fact that our expected result depends on the initial premise, that obviously no trickery would be utilized. But since the magician almost always employs some kind of deceit, this is of course an incorrect presumption. So the evidence presented by a magician is all visual. It has to be visual, because it is via these visual indicators that we aim to attract the attention of the audience. And according to the Klutz Book of Magic by John Cassidy and Michael Stroud, magic is not done, it's performed. Without a huge stage, it dies a quick death, just like any other type of performance art. Just because you wiggle your toes doesn't make you a dancer. Just because you can read music doesn't make you a singer or a musician. And just because you can pull a rabbit out of a hat doesn't make you a magician either. So this is just cheap gimmick, but the illusion is produced by the act itself. So for a film to work, of course, we need good locations, we need costumes, we need beautiful scenery and imagery and nice words that come in the form of a script to lure us into the story. Same as the magician, he has his own stage, but also the trick for it to work is to have good acting. Take a look at how great actors draw us in the story, making the illusion of real life even more realistic by letting us in to their inner thinking.
You want to protect your legacy.
My legacy? You don't like this place very much, do you? I've seen many of you come and go over the years, and I can tell the ones who enjoy their time here and the ones who don't.
When you see more experienced magicians in action, you will notice that they often use one kind of deception as a cover for another. They provide the illusion that something is being concealed in a certain physical location, but in reality it is being concealed in a less obvious location, and by doing so, they make the show more engaging for the audience. Filmmakers use that trick all of the time to direct your attention by using carefully orchestrated imagery within their compositions and using these shots, newly created shots, further to manipulate your attention using editing. And in doing so, they delay the narrative question being raised, creating more tension before the resolution. This is what we call cinematic tension. Check one of the greatest film directors talking about this concept, Alfred Hitchcock.
4 people are sitting around a table, talking about baseball, whatever you like. 5 minutes of it, very dull. Suddenly, a bomb goes off, blows the people to smithereens. What do the audience have? 10 seconds of shock. Now take the same scene and tell the audience there is a bomb under that table and will go off in 5 minutes. Well, the whole emotion of the audience is totally different because you've given them that information that in 5 minutes' time, that bomb will go off. Now the conversation about baseball becomes very vital because they're saying to you, don't be ridiculous, stop talking about baseball, there's a bomb under there. You've got the audience working. Now the only difference is, although I've been guilty of, in the picture sabotage, of making this error, but I've never made it since, the bomb must never go off. Because if you do, you work that audience into a state and then they'll get angry because you haven't provided them with any relief. And that's almost a must. So a foot touches the bomb, somebody looks down and says, my God, a bomb. Out of the window, then it goes off, just in time.
Contrary to popular belief, tension is achieved not by speeding things up, but by actually slowing things down and creating misdirection, just like in a magic trick. Remember one thing, there is no terror in the bang. Everything is in the anticipation of it. When we provide the audience enough information, they will piece together the plot in their heads. They'll make sense of the scattered visuals and with good continuity that will allow them to make links in their minds between shots that have no genuine relationship to one another to start with, and that way the illusion seems completely real. When people are on the fence about what's genuine, generally the magician's words might be the last push they need to make a decision. The magician carefully chooses his words in order to elicit some perceptions and suppress others. Like, for example, abracadabra or hocus pocus. For filmmakers, the mind can associate the sounds with the visuals, even though there may be no actual relationship between them. It's all an optical illusion in which the whole actually exceeds the parts, and by the use of dialogue and sound, the attention of the viewer can be completely refocused.
Go closer. Never show anyone. They'll beg you and they'll flatter you for the secret, but as soon as you give it up, you'll be nothing to them. You understand? Nothing. The secret impresses no one. The trick you use it for is everything.
Cinema, movies, and magic have always been closely associated. The very earliest people who made films were magicians, like Méliès. And remember, just like in any magic trick, the audience is not really looking for the secret. They want to be fooled. And directors, same as magicians, use that to their advantage. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next cut.